heart. Yale University, the Yale University here in the United States, has agreed to change some policies and revise training as part of a legal settlement after current and former students claimed the school discriminated against people with mental health problems. Listen to this, it's so important. So many young people develop mental health issues, or they come to the fore or become a crisis around the same time as they go to university. How universities deal with this situation varies. Now, when you're talking about some of the most prestigious universities in the world, they can really make a difference because other universities will follow. And get this, a group of students went through such difficult situations that they took it upon themselves, despite their mental health issues, to take on the university. And I'm just blown away by this. When you get what we call service user power, it is amazing. Joining me now is Dr. Alicia Floyd, co-founder of Elis for Rachael, and joins me now. Alicia, as I said, I've been following this story since last year. I have to say, as you know, with our emails. I'm so excited by it. Let's just set out what the issue was, because it's not unique to Yale. It's something that, oh my gosh, around the world is the issue. Just talk us through what the issue was.
So the lawsuit was about discrimination against students with mental health disabilities. So students at Yale and at a lot of other schools, particularly high-powered schools, for a long time have felt isolated, excluded, stigmatized, essentially you could say cast out by their universities when they face mental health crisis or mental health struggles, or when they deal with an exacerbation of chronic mental health disabilities. So what this lawsuit was about was trying to get parity, reasonable accommodation, and inclusion for those students.
Now, one of the many things that were brought up, I was just looking through it, court documents, etc. There was one story of, and I'm sure it's happened before, with a student who tried to take their own lives. So you can imagine somebody in the depths of despair, having someone visit them and suggest to them that they might like to leave.
Right. So, first of all, Trisha, thank you so much for calling us a student group. I'm well past college. We are an alumni-based group, but I can tell you that in fact happened to me over 20 years ago, and it had happened up until the present day.
What?
Yes, these times off are counted as voluntary. And in some cases, they truly are. The students and administration are on the same page. And in some cases, people are passive because they feel powerless. They've had their cell phone, electronics, means of communication taken away in the hospital. They're in a very vulnerable situation. They may have just tried to end their life, and they're in the hospital, and people come in and speak with them, and the message is very clearly, you need to take time off, and in some cases that may be true. In other cases, it has been more of a top-down process, and students who've spoken to us have felt like they had no agency. Their agency was taken from them in this very vulnerable time.
So, I mean, as well, when you've got, and again, I've talked about mental health issues with students at Cambridge University, when you've got these very high-powered universities, part of the whole thing is there's a lot of kudos that you're at this university, which you feel, and you can be made to feel that you are blocking a space because you've got a mental health crisis, that you have somehow failed to live up to this big name. There's a whole lot of stuff going with, failure. Mental health issues being seen as some kind of failure.
Yes, and that is so wrong. And that's one thing I hope the settlement lets people see, is that students with mental health struggles are students like everyone else. I tell you, in the wide array of students I've spoken to during my 2.5 years of advocacy with Elis for Rachael, if there's one thing I've learned, is that these are Yale students. These are not Yale students asterisk. These are Yale students with all of the typical laundry list of accomplishments and ambitions and diverse talents. and there's no one standard person who suffers from a mental illness and has to take time off from Yale. That does not exist. So I hope that this has brought the publicity around this lawsuit has somewhat brought that to light. And I think a major win of this case is that we got some inclusion for these people who felt stigmatized and isolated. We got ongoing campus access. You no longer have to have a permission slip signed for each time you want to set foot on campus. You have the same rights as a typical visitor.
Whoa. It's just, so before, if you'd had a mental health issue, you needed what to get up back on campus?
So previously, the policies were that if you were, it was called withdrawn at that time, if you were medically withdrawn, and frankly, it didn't matter mental or physical health, that if you wanted to come back on campus, you had to have explicit permission to do so. So in that sense, you had less rights to wander onto campus than any visitor of anyone at Yale.
And what was the thinking behind that? Was it about insurance or if anything happens to you, we don't want it on our land, or what?
Well, I really couldn't speak. I could only speculate about the motivations. I know that that's been the case for many decades. And I know that it is a major win now that they have reformed those policies. At the settlement of this lawsuit, you can go onto campus. Not only that, you can keep your campus employment. That is incredibly important, including remote employment, incredibly important for low-income students who sometimes have no buffer. That sometimes, people think of Yale as this place where all these, rich blue-blooded kids go. Yale actually does quite a good job of accepting a diverse group of students, including a number of first-generation low-income students. Whether they traditionally have done such a great job of supporting them, that is another question, but I think they're doing a better job now with these significant reforms, campus access, allowing people to keep their remote employment, allowing continuity of health insurance. You used to lose your Yale health insurance if you left for a health issue. All of these things have now been changed. Simplifying the reinstatement process. I see you shaking your head again. Yes.
I know, because it's just, but so with, as far as getting back into university, once you've been written off medically, was that previously an absolute nightmare?
Well, it was onerous. You had to have, the problem with the system up until a few years ago was that you had to have a number of non-clinical qualifications. Why should you be re-qualifying yourself intellectually when you already got into Yale? Why do you need non-clinical letters of recommendation? Why do you need to interview with non-clinical staff members? Now, that has all very recently been changed, but that was the case for many, many decades. And so the thing that made it, well, and also logistically, it was quite onerous because up until not long ago, you had to take 2 4-year university courses, which for a low-income student coming from a rural area, can they afford that? No. Can they even get to that? No. Then, there are community college exceptions. It was logistically quite difficult, and now it's tremendously simplified. Now, all you need is a letter of clearance from a medical provider. You need to interview with the chief of either Yale Health or Yale Mental Health and Counseling, depending on reason for your withdrawal. And you need to write a short statement about why you feel you're prepared to return.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Absolutely. Now, I mentioned because so many young people are about off to college in the US, off to university in the UK, and it's spotty. The support you get if you have a mental health issue is so spotty. In some universities, pupils or students will absolutely stay quiet and suffer in hell and become far more ill because they daren't speak out because there's almost a punishment.
That is absolutely correct. And that has been a huge issue. And I hope what everyone realizes comes out of this settlement is not just hope for students who actually have to take the medical withdrawal, but for all of those who are on the fence, who now see this as a realistic option to take time to take care of themselves, who are now able to do this, whereas before they would have tried to suck it up. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
And that's, just explain to us the name of the organization, because, it came from something very tragic that I'm sure has happened sadly in many instances around the world.
Sure. So Elis for Rachael is named after Rachael. Rachael Shaw Rosenbaum was a first year at Yale in 2021 when she ended her life by suicide. And the group came together. Rachael had her own concerns about exactly what you said, being afraid to get the help that she needed, being afraid she would have to leave Yale. And we came together as a group really organically after that. Basically it was just, there was feeling around this, there were online comments being made. And then one of my core leaders, Lily Colby, said, hey, why don't we all get together and discuss this? I think it would be better if we discussed on a Zoom. And so folks got together. And at that point, we discovered decades of people with shared lived experience of, all of these problems that have been festering for so long. And a number of us older and dismayed that things now are still the same as things then. Like, how could we not have somehow changed with the times? And several of us became very, very determined to do something about it. And that's how Elis about.
Yeah, which indeed you have. Now, did you go through mental health I mean, I've been very open about my mental health struggles. Not everybody does want to talk about it, but is this from a place of, your own experience?
Yes. Yes, it definitely is. I matriculated at Yale in 1998, like I was a freshman in 1998. And in my sophomore year, I had the first of 2 hospitalizations for mental health crisis. And I've been open about this as well. I actually was hospitalized the first time after a suicide attempt. I was very passive in the hospital. I felt that I had to do as I was told. It was a rough situation throughout the hospitalization. And it was rough being told by this school that I loved and I wanted to love me back, essentially. That I wasn't welcome. That those weren't the words, but that was certainly the feeling that was conveyed. So I took time off and I did finish, and I went on to medical school, and I'm now an internal medicine doctor. And I have, I think, an interesting perspective now, having been on both. I'm not a psychiatrist, but just been on the patient side and spent a lot of time in emergency rooms. And it's been interesting to me to see it from that perspective. But the bottom line is I am so happy and so proud of us and proud of our students who got this done finally.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, and I am too, because as I said before, it's something that will resonate. It's not just Yale, it will make other universities have a look at their policy, which is why when I saw this, I was like, it is so difficult when you've been a service user to talk out about it, B, incorporate it into your experience and not let all the demons back. It's that, because it can bring up things. So when I read that your group of you was doing this, I am just so proud to have been able to talk to you. I mean, congratulations. As you say, it is a first and a long step. I'm sure we'll talk again. I've been after you guys for so long. If that is a really important message from Dr. Alicia Floyd there. If you are off to university, if you're going to university, if you have anxiety, if you have mental health issues, please talk to someone about it. Do not suck it up or suffer in silence. A lot more to come.